We're here. We're back at it again.
Back at it
Again, again.
again.
I was rolling through the Instagram page looking just at the old posts,
Yeah.
and I realized I had titled one of them also back at it again, which means this round is back at it again.
Again.
So, a quick thank you to all of our very loyal listeners who have come through, much like Futurama watchers, for
Oh,
each renewal after cancellation.
yes. We
So,
do appreciate it.
well,
If you are still listening, you are indeed one of those loyal.
we know that you you're there for us. If we were in a
Always.
hospital bleeding out and needed a kidney transplant, that one of you faithful listeners would be there to give us that kidney transplant.
Exactly. And that's what we're counting on because, special surprise, one of us will be getting a kidney cancer.
Listen
And
until
that'll
the
be the
end for the reveal.
and for those of you who are considering giving up their kidney and it's the first time listening, I'm Duran Baron.
I'm Dominique Belcher. And we're still members of the Electric Fools,
The electrical blues.
who may or may not be missing a kidney. Maybe a kidney, like, split amongst the five of us. Who knows?
Who knows?
We could all just be missing a part of a kidney,
And together they make a full kidney.
a full kidney. Oh gosh. Anyways, so that's just kind of the nonsense we get into for those of you who are just, yeah, now joining us on this discovery, self-discovery, really.
Yeah. We're all discovering ourselves together.
Mm-hmm. And you, never mind.
I was thinking it too. I just wanted to do it. But I'm glad we're on the same page.
Gosh. Oh man. Well, anyways, we're not gonna get any new listeners after this.
Honestly. We gotta lure them in.
Yeah. Either you're in it or you're out it, what I'm saying? Like belly
Yes.
buttons. You have an
Like
innie or you have an outie.
and we're both deep innies. We are in it for the long run.
That's very, very true. So, fun fact about me, this has nothing to do with what we're going to talk about, which I'll
Right.
explain in a second for you listeners. But, fun fact about me, I was scared for most of my life, and to an extent, I still am, that my belly button was just going to burst open and all of my organs would just spill out of my body. So, yeah.
And I think it's a valid fear. I don't know how
Right?
rational it is, but that's a terrifying thought.
That's what I'm saying. I've seen Alien. I've seen
Yeah.
The Thing. There's plenty of
Yeah.
stomach bursting.
There is. On that note, let's get into it. This is
Let's
where we
get
talk
into
about
it.
movies. That is the point of this podcast.
That is the point. Because the two of us were just so filled with thoughts about movies. That's basically all we think about at this
It really
point.
is.
So we're like, well, maybe there's other people in the world who would
Who think?
exactly would maybe like to think about our things.
Yes.
And maybe think about how thinking wrong we have thought. Maybe.
Maybe.
I'm not sure if I said that right, actually.
I don't know. I was lost to begin with, so I'm not that much help in the situation.
We'll fix it in post.
Of course.
So, anyways, so we have a very fun, hopefully, topic to get into. But first, we just wanted to talk a little bit about what we've been watching lately, what we've
Yeah.
gotten into, what we've thrown ourselves headfirst into to emerge changed people for better or for worse. So, what's been on your dash lately?
Well, so I know last time I talked about my James Bond marathon. And
Yes.
my update on that is it's not going well. I am not watching any James Bond movies. But
When you say that, do you mean it's not going well that the movies have not been good, or that you just haven't
I just
been
haven't
good with
watched
it?
them.
Oh, okay,
I
okay,
haven't been
okay.
keeping up like I mean to. Um, but sooner than later, I'll get back on track. Um, tell you what I have watched though.
Yes.
Um, this week I recently watched both John Carpenter's Escape from New York and The Fog, both of which
Oh,
I enjoyed immensely.
oh. Any relation to M. Night Shyamalan's The Happening?
Nope, not that
Oh,
I'm aware of.
that's probably for the best.
Probably. And I will say this: the more I see, and I've watched quite a few of his movies now, so most of his biggest ones, I just say John Carpenter is in my top three directors of all time.
Really?
Yeah, I just every movie of his I've really enjoyed. Even my least favorite of his that I've seen so far, which was Christine, I still think was really good. That one just didn't vibe with me.
Sure. Not
But
everything does.
exactly. But all of his other movies that I've seen, I've really enjoyed. Like that's it. I Escape from New York was awesome. What a cool '80s flick with a very young Kurt Russell and Snake Plissken, and he was fantastic. The whole movie is just so stylized and fun, and I really enjoyed it. And then The Fog was also a really fun one, and we did that to kick off September, as we now consider September fall. So to kick off the fall season, watched
Ah,
The Fog, which I think um, it had all the components of a really, really good movie. It just didn't quite fit together. Um, so the story was a little bit jumbled, but I think the aesthetic was 10 out of 10, and it was a really fun movie. So those are the two movies that I've watched this week that have really just kind of stuck with me.
hmm. Very
What
good.
about what about you, Dominique?
Well, from those of you that listened to our last episode, you may recall that we, through Three Stooges-esque discussion, realized that I had seen the director's cut and ending of Army of Darkness. So
Yeah,
I went back and watched the original version of Army of Darkness, and I definitely liked it a lot better.
it's a much better ending.
Much better ending. So that was good. And I also watched the I don't really know if to call it a reboot or a spin-off or just a movie set in the same world or what as Evil Dead 1, but I watched Evil Dead 2013 and was surprised at how really scary it was. It was really scary. It was terrifying. But uh pretty freaking good, not gonna lie. It may or not be the then this is
A little spicy.
a little spicy. I was gonna say heretical, but I don't think that's a word.
Oh, I don't know if that's word,
Um
but I know where you're going with that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it's actually the best Evil Dead movie. It's definitely not my favorite. Evil Dead 2 is still easily. But yeah, it's either 2013 or 2, I think.
Interesting.
But that's just me. Um
So no, I wasn't planning on watching it until I saw your letterboxd
mhm.
review, and now I'm more intrigued than ever.
I I'd recommend it. I think you should at least watch it just
I'm sure I will.
for old time's sake, certainly. Um, I also watched the Sylvester Stallone arm wrestling movie, which had a lot less arm wrestling than I was expecting, which was disappointing. And I definitely didn't go see Top Gun Maverick for the eighth and final time.
Definitely not.
I definitely did not do that. I definitely do have a freaking rad theater quality and size print poster now that my
What?
dad managed to finagle from.
What?
I also have a cardboard cutout of Tom Cruise that's currently sitting in the backseat of my car.
What?
Yeah, no, it's dope. My dad's really good at just like finding random crap like that. And so the Applebee's in town, this lady that owns it, I guess, was like selling the merch from it. And my dad's like, oh my gosh, my 24-year-old son loves movie merchandise. And
Oh,
so he got
man.
the cutout, and then either my mom or my dad, whoever, was like, yeah, our son freaking, he loves movie posters and stuff. And she's like, oh, does he? I'll throw in a poster too. And so, yeah, it's currently in my room because I don't know where the heck I'm going to put it. Because, as you may recall from our days of living very close to each other,
Very.
um, our living room's kind of full.
Yeah.
So I don't know where to put it exactly, but it's going somewhere.
No, I can't wait to see. You have to send me a picture. That's awesome.
Oh, I'll do that right now.
Wow.
Yeah, I already took a picture because I wanted to show my dad.
Yeah. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
I'm excited.
So, yeah, I saw one other movie this week, but that's important for our conversation that we're gonna get to.
Yes.
But first, fans, listeners, lovers, maybe even depending on who's listening right now. Um, we may be just a small but the best and only podcast
The only podcast.
on on the internet right now that anyone has ever done. But we're this episode, you guys, this episode right now that you're listening to right now is sponsored. And not only is it just sponsored, it's sponsored by famous director Steven Spielberg.
Oh
That's
my
right,
gosh.
ladies and gentlemen. The famous director of Bridge of Spies, War Horse, and a single part of Twilight Zone, the movie. He asked, he messaged me yesterday and was like, hey, Electric Oofloos, I would love to sponsor your next episode. And if you're interested, and Darren, I still need to tell you
Oh,
this, so you're gonna find this out for the first
this
time.
is news for me.
Exactly. He wants to direct a movie adaptation of like the story of our life on this podcast. Since it's the
Well,
first podcast ever made and the only one.
it's could you say
He
it's the most influential?
it is the most influential podcast, which for a man that's kind of like, up and coming as far as the whole directing thing
Yeah.
goes. We'll have to see. I haven't given, I wanted to talk to you first. I haven't given him any particular word about it yet, but so we can talk about that later. But he just wanted to tell you, faithful listeners at home, that this is indeed the best podcast ever made. Not only just because it's the only one ever made, but because the quality of podcasting, and of course, there's no comparisons to make, but it's just so high that it's
Eh,
his favorite podcast.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love to see new up and coming directors. We'll promote Tim
Yeah,
as long as
exactly.
he promotes us.
Yeah,
We're
yeah,
in
yeah.
that kind of a relationship.
Yeah. In fact, we're actually going to talk about one of his more lesser known films um, that was recently put in theaters this past weekend that I really enjoy. I don't think a lot of people have seen it, so it'll be nice to
It's
kind of
pretty
get it out.
underground.
It's pretty underground. Oh, I'm surprised I made it through that.
No, that was really good, dude. Yeah, I was hooked.
So yeah, so today we thought it'd be fun to talk about the most influential movies from a number of decades. For me specifically, I don't know about you if you have any more like thoughts beforehand, but most of my movie going knowledge beyond like a handful of old films that I really like starts at the 70s. So I was
I agree.
considering starting. Okay. So I think we should start there.
No,
Besides
I think that's
giving
great.
Very good. Besides giving a quick shout out to Casablanca and All About Eve for being fantastic movies that I don't remember when they came out, and they're in black and white, so they're old. So
Yeah. And
there you
that's the
go.
thing. I've seen movies from before the 70s,
Right.
watch me, but I don't feel confident enough that I've seen enough to talk
Hmm.
about which are the ones that are most influential.
I don't either, but I do
And
have the
besides Citizen Kane.
besides yeah, I do have the gall to say anyways, and which is Casablanca for I think the 40s, and then Batman the movie for the 60s.
Yes, 100%. I will
That's
always stand
definitive.
behind Adam West.
That is definitive answers. There's
And, and we're starting with the 70s because we don't feel like that's up for debate.
it really isn't. Because like we've seen plenty of like I've seen all of the movies of the 60s. There's so many that I've seen that I really can't like think of any right now outside of
I'm
Batman the
sure.
movie. But none of them compare to Batman the movie, so it would be pointless for us to even
To
discuss it,
even
really.
talk about it. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So, 70s. What are you thinking? I feel like I already know the answer, but
But
what are you thinking?
we'll just go straight into it. Dominique, what was the other movie you watched?
Oh,
Yesterday, was
okay.
it?
We'll start with me. So, this is a little, yeah, it was yesterday night. A little film called Jaws. It was just released this past weekend, as far as I know, in
Mhm.
theaters. It was released in the 70s, which is why we're talking about it now. But as far as I know, like I've never seen it in a theater before. So
So, as far as we know, it is a
this is its
current
first
movie.
theatrical release because it's just built up a huge like cult following over the years. And
Mhm.
so Universal was like, you know what, this is a pretty small film, but there's enough of an audience out there now that I think it'd be pretty cool to put it out for the Labor Day weekend. And so being a big fan of it myself, and I believe you're a fan of it, but I don't really know
I
anyone else
am.
who is. So it's just so
Unfortunately,
small.
that's partially true.
What do you mean?
Well, not many of our
Oh
peers
yeah.
who we've shown it to enjoy it quite as much
I
as
know.
us.
And oh my gosh, watching
This
it
has
last
happened
night.
several times.
Oh my gosh. Watching it last night. I res I don't, but I respect a lot of my our friends' opinions that are wrong about a number of movies.
Right.
But oh my gosh, Jaws is objectively fantastic.
It really is.
Oh my goodness, man. Like, oh. So I went with my younger sister who's just coming up here for college. And she'd never seen it before. So it was a very proud moment for me to be like, well, guess what? You're finna watch one of the best movies ever made. And she really liked it, which was cool. We watched it in a fairly well packed theater. There's a lady behind us that like screamed at every single scare, which
Oh
was
boy.
hilarious.
Oh, that's awesome. Getting the
It
full
was
experience.
exactly. It legitimately felt like us just like back in 75 watching it on like a black and white tuner screen since it wasn't released in theaters at the time. It was something else. And so yeah, even though no one saw it back when it came out, it still became the first summer blockbuster and has that title. It's a really weird. It's a lot of story that I can't go into right now.
Right.
But yeah, it was the first original summer blockbuster, even though it didn't in theaters. Really weird. Um,
So bizarre.
so bizarre. How bizarre. How bizarre. Um, and it's fantastic. it set off the career of our friend Steven Spielberg, who's still kind of like going off the success of that one. I feel like getting that movie,
He's
one
still
of his
riding
first
that high.
films, exactly, one of his first films into theaters this past weekend was probably really big, really exciting for him. So I'm happy for him to see that. And of course, I was gonna go support him. You know, our close friend Steven Spielberg. What a guy.
What a man.
His camera work is just, oh, it's so good in the movie. That dolly zoom is like, I would say definitively the best shot in just movie history. It is so good.
Can you explain to us? Because you know, we know what dolly zooms are, but there
Right.
might be some of us who don't. What
Oh, that's a good point.
what is a dolly zoom?
So, and correct me if I'm wrong. I know what it looks like. I'm a little more fuzzy on how it works, but if I remember correctly, you have your camera focused on whatever. And so how it works is the cameraman like physically moves his camera backwards while zooming in, and it creates this effect where the background slowly moves farther and farther out of the focal character, building whatever you're focusing on, and giving you more of a surrounding, but making it a larger shot while still keeping whatever's in focus the main like focus.
Yeah.
I believe.
No, I think that explains it pretty well. It really is just when the cameraman moves the camera backwards while zooming in simultaneously. And it's a little bit hard to imagine what that would look like, but I guarantee you've seen it in movies. And if you need to know, just look up Jaws.
I'll
Dolly.
even link the scene here in
Link
the
it.
little check out this video like that YouTube does, because this will be on YouTube. Hello YouTube. We're talking into the endless void of space right now, but soon we'll be
Yeah.
talking into your
To
mother
into you.
boxes. Just
Yes.
right into YouTube, like at
Right into
Gates, YouTube HQ.
you.
uh,
And that'll and I agree 100%. It is one of the coolest shots in any movie, and it is fantastic
so
use of
good.
this
And it was so cool in
effect.
3D. Oh my gosh.
Oh, I believe it. And so to start us off, I think Jaws is the most influential movie of the 70s, hands down. And I really don't think there's too much debate about that. The problem is in the 60s moving into the 70s, we start to see a lot more genres become popular. And so there's a lot that comes from the 70s. I think going back to John Carpenter, because I love to that's who's on my mind. Halloween in the late
Ah,
70s,
for sure.
and that spawned. It didn't create the genre of slasher film, but it definitely brought it into the
It
limelight,
created
if you will.
it created the genre of Halloween sequels.
It created which is a genre in of itself. Um, but of course we get Alien as well, which is another one of my
So
favorite
good.
movies. Um, that also heavily influenced the sci-fi and horror genre from there on out. Um, Similarly, in the comedy genre, we got a lot of Mel Brooks stuff.
That's true.
Uh, we got Blazing Saddles, and I think Young Frankenstein is a 70s one.
I believe so.
And I love Young Frankenstein.
That's the one I still haven't seen. I've seen Blazing Saddles and
And I think
Robin
I'm
Hood.
willing to bet you've seen Spaceballs, right?
Oh, and
Haven't you?
Spaceballs. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay, okay. And I'm gonna throw this out there. I think Young Frankenstein will be your favorite Mel Brooks film.
I believe it.
I
Uh,
genuinely think that will be your favorite. Spaceballs is mine, but Young Frankenstein is a close second.
no, yeah, I believe it. I've been meaning to track that one down. I'll have to do that. I will do that. Just for you, Darren.
Thank you.
And
I
Mel
appreciate
Brooks,
it.
another close
And Mel Brooks,
personal friend.
who We hope sponsors a future video.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
I'm sure he will
I'm
after we give him the
sure
shout out.
we'll contact him for the episode where I talk about how I would just watch Young Frankenstein.
Yes.
Melly, as we like to call him. Oh gosh.
Another movie that's once again another one of my favorites, but I also think holds its place as an honorable mention in most influential of the 70s is Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Speaking of Spielberg.
Speaking of Spielberg, I think that was his first theatrical release. It was a small release, but
Small release, of course.
yeah, no, I think it did hit theaters or something. Maybe, I don't I wasn't alive.
We weren't around in the 70s. So but I agree. I think Jaws is the most influential.
You don't have any other movies to mention?
I'm trying to think what you're hinting at here, my friend.
Do you really? Are you messing with me or?
Oh, no, I'm not. I know what you're getting at. Star Wars.
I thought you
Oh,
were
man.
kidding with me for a second there.
No, I was drawing a blank. I was drawing a blank. No, you're right. All right. No, Star Wars is up there. I don't know. Between Jaws and Star Wars, what do you think has more influence?
So I'm a bigger fan of Jaws than original
Right.
Star Wars. As much as I of course don't get me wrong, I love original Star Wars. But um oh
If we're talking, okay, so here's what I'm thinking. If we're talking about its effects on pop culture as a whole, I think Star Wars
I
is
would agree 100%.
hands down the king.
Mm-hmm.
On filmmaking
It's
and
kind of a
influencing,
hard tie, I
it's
feel.
kind of hard because both of them were so impactful in innovating the technology.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think Star Wars would pull ahead if only for Industrial Light and Magic (ILM).
See, and I'd feel like I'd honestly agree with that.
Because ILM has pioneered special effects through every decade up into the 90s. They're doing Jurassic Park and making the best CGI there was at the time, and CGI that still holds up 20 plus years ago.
Yeah, like
Um,
legitimately, it still looks like really stinking good.
and
I mean,
so
both movies do, but
and so now that you mention it, because I was not on top of my game there, I might have to go with Star Wars as the most influential 70s movie.
my heart, of course, says Jaws. I have a Jaws poster hanging up in my living room because
And
I
it's
love Jaws. It's such a
wonderful.
cool poster. But I think if I'm to be like honest to my movie making soul, I'd probably also have to go with Star Wars. I feel like movie making between the two, they're pretty well tied, pretty innovative, both of them. I
I
think
agree.
maybe Jaws pulls a little ahead with a stronger like cinematography and camera work, maybe.
Hmm.
But yeah, no, given the social impact, the pop culture impact that Star Wars has had, it's probably Star
It's pretty
Wars.
hard.
It's pretty Star Wars.
It's pretty hard to beat.
It is. So I think I'd go with Star Wars. But Jaws is my baby, my friend.
Yes.
I love a little shark boy. A big shark boy,
A
but
big shark boy, but him baby.
him baby. He's just baby.
So now here's the one I was really worried about. The 80s.
Oh, bro. Oh my gosh. Because this is where we really get cooking for both of us.
Yes.
Because we adore the 80s.
Yes. And 80s movies. And Ghostbusters is my favorite movie of all time. Uh, it's and so many of other movies from my top 50 list on Letterboxd that I'm putting together come from the 80s.
Oh, I still need to see that.
I'm still working on the actual rankings. I think I've got all the movies I want on it at this point, but
Mm-hmm.
now I'm just organizing it.
Okay. Okay. As soon as you're done, you totally gotta share it with me.
And I will.
I'm I'm dying to see it.
And going into the 80s and also the 90s, it's hard because it's difficult to not just put a Spielberg film
Yeah.
in, just be like, oh, Indiana Jones,
Oof.
oh, Jurassic Park, you know, it, because those are genuinely some of the most influential movies and
Oof.
some of the most, uh,
War
some
of
of the
the
coolest stuff.
Worlds.
War of the Worlds, of course.
I'd go with
That,
Minority Report. Minority Report's one of my all-time faves. But I think 2000s we probably have someone beat. But legitimately, it is really easy for just 70s, 80s, and 90s just be Spielberg, Spielberg, Spielberg.
mhm. So I'm gonna ask you, what are some of your thoughts on the most influential, impactful 80s movies, both on pop culture and cinema?
Oh, that's gonna take me a second to think. So while I'm taking that second to think, I just looked it up. All About Eve came out in 1950, and Casablanca came out in 1942. So we can
Mhm.
go back farther. All About Eve 50s, Casablanca 40s. So we're
Nice.
really covering the entirety of the time movies have been around.
And The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly for the 60s.
Oh, very good, very good. Okay, so I'm looking at my top favorites list, and the first 80s movie I have on here for my top is Aliens, but it's followed closely by Batman, Back to the Future, and Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Ooh, all of which are bangers.
I think because it's hard to separate between like most influential and what my favorite one is.
So I want to throw something out there and I want to hear
Okay,
your thoughts on it.
okay, hit me.
Where would you place Back to the Future?
See, that's the one I was gonna say because that is my favorite 80s movie as far as just like because I have it's complicated, but I have Aliens ranked higher, but I think Back to the Future is my favorite 80s movie, if that makes
Hmm.
any sense. So it's definitely my favorite, and I'd go as far as to say, and again, this is weird because I like Aliens more, but I'd go as far as to say Back to the Future is the best 80s movie, while maybe Aliens is one of the best movies to come out of the 80s, if that makes any sense. Because like Aliens feels very timeless, and Back to the Future does too in a way, but it's in a different way. Like if you showed me Back to the Future for the first time, like, oh, this is definitely a movie that came out in the 80s, you know?
Right.
And so I feel like it's more exemplary of that decade, but I don't know if it's the most influential. It's certainly my favorite. Oh gosh, this is a lot harder than I
Because
thought.
I'm going to put forth another one,
Okay.
Blade Runner.
Oh shoot, I forgot that came out in
The
18.
whole cyberpunk
Oh
genre
no.
can somehow be traced back to Blade
Blade
Runner.
Runner. Oh shoot, you're right. Oh no. I should have
It's
known
hard,
this is gonna be the hardest one.
right? And I know, and we were talking about most influential movies throughout the decades. I, my mind stopped when I came to the 80s.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have ideas for other decades.
Yep.
The
Me
80s,
too.
there are so many. I don't know.
I oh shoot. I don't know either. This is hard. I'm gonna be a little controversial and say Keaton's Batman because
Whoa.
in a similar way to Jaws, Batman 89 was one of the first movies that just became everyone had to go see it. It was super advertised. There was, product deals with every single thing imaginable. There's Batman everywhere because WB, of course, no, yeah, WB, of course, wanted it to, succeed. And boy, did they get their wish. I've seen a number of videos about like the history of Batmania, as it was called.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating the kind of things they did. So because I can't think of a better answer, I can't
How
justify
much?
Back to the Future.
No, that's fair. How much do you think modern day superhero movies, we got the Avengers and Marvel, of course, dominating the box office, and they have been for like a decade. How much of that do you think can be accredited to Batman 89?
Oh, well, it's kind of hard to say because, well, Superman 1 and 2 were pretty, like, people liked them a lot. Again, Batman was the big one. But
Mhm.
we have this weird phase where, like, where Batman was kind of the Iron Man. Imagine if for the MCU we like got Thor the Dark World, which I don't hate as much as most people. It's fine. But imagine we got Thor the Dark World and then they're like, oh, actually the MCU sucks. We don't want superhero movies anymore. And it stopped. So that's kind of what happened once we got to Batman and Robin.
Yeah.
It kind of just stopped until we got X-Men and Spider-Man to come back around. But that being said, I feel like studios would have been even more cautious because from Robin to X-Men, it's a space of 3 years. And given that movies weren't pumped up nearly as fast as they are now, I feel like it would have been a lot longer to get into the superhero phase we have now if we hadn't had Batman prove that they could be very financially successful.
Hmm. No, I agree. I also think it just has one of the best superhero theme songs.
Oh, bro, Danny Elfman's Batman theme is so good.
It's so good.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't feel like putting up too much debate with you. I'm because to me it just doesn't feel right. But I also can't think of much else to really compete with it.
Yeah, I this one is honestly viewers come message us on our
Tell
letterbox.
us, please.
Yeah.
Tell us what you think. And for the sake of competition, I'm gonna throw just one thing. I watched it this week,
Okay.
and I don't think it is a wrong answer. I'm just gonna throw Raiders of the Lost Ark out there.
Oh, that is so valid. I freaking love Raiders of the Lost Ark so
It,
much.
once again, I feel like it's kind of just cheating doing another Spielberg, but man, I don't know. I don't know what else there is, and just to put forth some competition, I'm going to say Raiders.
That's valid. And then for more competition, if not necessarily an honest answer, it's a somewhat honest answer. Top Gun for having the best and most 80s soundtrack in history.
It really does.
And also giving us Top Gun Maverick 36 years later. Bless, bless.
What a
Um,
time to be alive.
our thing is,
So, in that quick break that we had, I cheated a little bit and I pulled up Google and did some research.
I have a tab
Um,
open on my computer right now. It's not cheating.
something we didn't talk about in the 70s,
Ooh,
which
okay.
I still don't think it totally trumps Star Wars and its influence on pop culture, but The Godfather.
Oh, for sure. As far as like
And
a more, artsy film goer kind of a thing.
no, but I feel like some people would be upset if we didn't bring up The Godfather when talking about influential movies of the 70s.
That's true. I'm positive all of our listeners have watched The Godfather, which,
Oh, I'm
if
sure.
it's you, me, Kiri, and Eileen, none of us have.
Yeah,
We just need to. Okay, now we just need to make that a running joke, like every
that we
episode
have
that we
not
haven't seen
seen
The
The Godfather.
Godfather. I've seen the brief parody they did in Rugrats in Paris,
Oh, yeah.
so there's at least that.
Flawless.
I have that going for me. Anyways, so any more thoughts in 80s or are we on to the 90s?
I think we should be on to the 90s, but
Okay.
really, I think
There's
I
just
think
so
all of the
many.
yeah, Raiders, Batman, and I really do think Blade Runner could be up there,
I
if
think so
only for its
too.
effect on uh, the genre,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
neo noir,
Mm-hmm.
cyberpunk. So
Cyberpunk
really,
2077. If
2077.
we didn't have Blade Runner, we wouldn't have Keanu Reeves in Cyberpunk 2077.
That's true. I 100% believe that.
And then we never would have gotten the You're
You're
Breathtaking theme.
breathtaking.
And then where would we be as a society?
We'd be worse off
We
than we
would.
are. So, moving on to the 90s, Space Jam.
Let's go.
It's gotta be Space Jam.
No, yeah, I feel that's valid. What other movie has I don't even remember which
I,
basketball it is, but he's like, it wasn't a dream. It really happened, which is my favorite line in the entire movie. Good stuff. Yeah, no. Well, we got to put a little bit of meat in this podcast. So,
all right.
for outside of the immaculate masterpiece that is Space Jam, what else are we looking at?
Uh, once again, it's just Spielberg. Between
Yeah.
Saving Private Ryan
Oh my gosh, so good,
and Jurassic Park,
so good.
um, I don't know.
That's
I'm putting forth those.
completely fair. I'm trying to think if I have any other thoughts. I love Edward Scissorhands, but I don't know if it's necessarily in the like
Influential category.
influential category exactly. Best of 90s, maybe. Oh, Silence of the Lambs. Duh.
Silence of the Lambs.
I
Big Lebowski.
freaking love Big Lebowski. But I don't know if Silence of the
I don't
Lambs
know how
fits
influential
into
those
that.
are.
Definitely one of the best. But yeah, I'm not sure about influential necessarily. We could put Nightmare Before Christmas. I'd validly put Nightmare Before Christmas out there.
Oh, oh,
Oh,
oh.
Scooby Doo on
Uh,
Zombie Island.
I love that movie. T2.
Oh, I always forget
Terminator
T2
2.
came out in the 90s.
I know. It came out in 93. Same with
It's
Groundhog Day.
That's a great one. I always feel like
And
T2
then,
came out like the same year Aliens did, even though they're both James Cameron sequels, so that's not very likely.
no. But I would definitely put Terminator 2 up there.
No, that's for sure. Actually, that is
Two good
100%.
big budget, over the top action flicks, and it just happens to be a fantastic movie on its own.
Such a good movie. It like I still remember watching it for the first time, just like here at the apartment,
Mhm.
and just being blown away at how stinking good that movie was.
It's really freaking awesome.
It's really stinking good. Has no reason being as good as it is. I mean, it is James Cameron, so
And that also brings me to another one that I do not like this movie.
is it Titanic?
It's Titanic.
Boo, freaking Titanic sucks.
That movie is so boring.
It
But
is.
we all know how it's ending.
Yep.
It doesn't.
It's just melded within pop culture. Like
But
everyone
it
knows
is.
Titanic,
Mhm.
which is
And it made an absurd amount of money.
an absurd amount of money. But guess who just got taken over as Paramount's #1 grossing movie domestically? By my personal favorite movie of the year. Get wrecked, Titanic. I don't know if it's probably not gonna cross it worldwide, globally, but Top Gun Maverick, baby. Paramount's #1 highest grossing film domestically. Let's go.
Awesome.
Because, yeah, no, I also kind of high key hate Titanic. And maybe hate isn't even the right word. I just don't like it, you
I
know?
don't like it.
It's
I don't get it.
I don't get it either. I wasn't around in 97 by 2 months, but still.
So I think if I had to decide one, and this one might be a little bit more of a hot take, and I'm sure there are other ones that are influential in so many other ways.
Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey.
Absolutely. The first Toy Story.
Oh, that is an out of the box decision, but one
Out of
that
the toy box.
out of the
toy box
closet. What?
Oh.
I would actually completely agree with that because I was pretty ready to just be like, you know what, Jurassic Park, sure, Space Jam, then Jurassic Park.
Space Jam, then Jurassic. Yes, we know Space Jam.
There's a reason why Space Jam 2 is called A New Legacy. It's because Space Jam 1 has
it's
a crazy
legacy.
Exactly. It is the legacy of basketball, cinema, Michael Jordan.
We may never peak like that again.
We will, if you know what I mean. But
no, Toy Story, its effect on not just cartoons, not just animated films, but computer generated effects, which, thinking back on it, we should have put forth Tron for the 80s.
Oh, shoot. Can you believe Tron, The Thing, and Blade Runner all came out on the same year?
What a year.
Legitimately. Man.
But a Toy Story is a completely different style of filmmaking altogether. It is the first completely computer generated movie. And there is a lot to be said for that, and it ripples through the world of cinema that we still feel today.
Yeah, I know. That's actually a very good point that I had not considered, but you are completely right. I think I'd actually probably go with Toy Story because I mean, like, the way you said it right then really kind of clicked something in my brain because in my head it's always just been, yeah, it's the first computer animated film, it is revolutionary. But the first movie completely made with computer graphics completely changes the ballgame, like that's crazy. That's insane.
It's when you think about computers in 1995
Exactly.
and how much work that would have gone into and the ingenuity they would have had to come up with it and pull it off so flawlessly, it's pretty immaculate, and really modern movies owe a big thanks to Toy Story.
Dang. Yeah, no, that's completely right, especially now that Marvel movies are pretty much CGI all the way. Hey-o! Just kidding. I love Marvel movies. Shout out to Shang-Chi because I love Shang-Chi so much.
Shang-Chi was awesome.
Anyways, yeah, no, okay. I think I'd go final answer Toy Story as well. You've completely changed my mind from the other thing that you suggested that I also changed my mind to.
No, and it's hard because once again, getting into it, there's a lot. James Cameron and Steven Spielberg still just
killing it,
come out swinging. Now, into the early 2000s, I have some thoughts on this.
Okay.
Already.
Is it Monsters Inc.?
No, it's not.
Disappointing. Just kidding.
And this one's a little bit harder because I guess technically it would have started in the 90s. And it's not one movie, but Harry Potter.
Well, Sorcerer's Apprentice, Sorcerer's Stone. Speaking of most influential movies of the 2000s,
starring Nicolas Cage.
I never would have known the song Secrets by One Republic without that movie. So there's at least that for a band I
Love
don't really
it.
like that much. Um, it came out in 2001. So it was 2000s. So,
Oh, okay.
because it came out the same year as one of the movies, I would say Lord of the Rings
Oh,
Fellowship of the
oh, oh, you're right.
But that said, it's kind of hard to really pick between Return or Boo. Total side note here, but I just Googled most influential movies of the 90s and they have Titanic at number one.
Yeah, I think I was looking at that
Boo.
same list of you.
Boo. Because I feel like Harry Potter is slightly more of a phenomenon, you know? Like it's
Hmm.
more widespread. It's more of the MCU now than, if that makes sense.
No, well, and that's kind of what I'm leaning towards. It is, you know, the big trend is these oh, what's the word I'm looking for? Stuff like the MCU and Harry Potter franchises. That's the word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And before Harry Potter, you have franchise. You have stuff like the James Bond movies that have been
hmm
going on since the 60s.
Yep. And then Phantom Menace had just came out 2 years earlier.
Yeah,
So we're
you
starting to
have
get
Star
into
Wars. So
real Star Wars franchising.
yeah, so you have Phantom Menace that comes out. So you have Star Wars, you have Star Trek,
Oh, bless. Wrath of Khan
but
is so good.
Wrath Khan is phenomenal. But
Which I'm sorry, I keep drilling you here.
no, no,
Also came
no.
out in 82. What was going on
Wow,
that year?
wow, there was something in the water.
Seriously.
But the Harry Potter movies, I, I I can't think of anything that would take this title from, but was
Yeah.
like the first like blockbuster franchise.
hmm
Like movie after movie, it just made bank. And people, it really shows how invested people can be in a movie franchise.
hmm
I, I do think because I like Harry Potter.
I
Before I
don't.
say for anything else, I will say this: I like Harry Potter.
I like Prisoner of Azkaban and the first Fantastic Beast movie, and that's it.
That's fair.
I'm saying that for the viewers, not for you. Well, it is for you, but not like as in a antagonistic way for you.
No, no, no.
I'm just
I
sharing
know
it
what you
for our viewers at home who are not
mean.
watching this because it's audio.
Yes, but I do like the Harry Potter movies. But all in all, I think they're just kind of fine. Uh, so in terms of like personal favorites, I mean, the Lord of the Rings movies are the
Oh,
Lord of the
easily.
Rings movies. It's the best trilogy to have ever been made.
Legitimately straight facts. That is true. That is just true.
And it's unmatched by anything before or after it. There is,
Unless we get a Space Jam 3.
unless we get it, and then that would give J.R.R. Tolkien. He'd
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
come back
yeah,
to
yeah.
life to write something new just to beat that. But the Lord of the Rings movies are some of the best,
Oh yeah.
and I'll be curious to see. And I feel like it's hard to talk about influence when I think we will still be seeing the influence of these movies like in the 2000s and 2010s.
Yeah.
We're still seeing the effects of them. I
Oh
don't
yeah.
think we have a clear picture of what all they've impacted, but people of our generation who saw them as kids will be growing up and being, you know, directors in the next few years.
We're like, my dad, what put on Lord of the Rings for me one day when I got home from middle school and my entire life changed. Something simple
Yeah,
like that. But
yeah,
like
yeah.
legitimately, that's what's gonna happen.
And I think we'll still be seeing the full extent of movies from these generations.
Mm.
still to come, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that does make a lot of sense. Jumping back a little bit, since we already did with the 80s as well. From the 90s, we completely forgot to mention The Matrix.
Ooh, we did.
As far as being just so 90s and early 2000s, like it basically
Really
created
awesome.
the whole punk rock scene of the early 2000s. You know, we wouldn't have Linkin Park without The Matrix. You know what I'm saying?
Whoa. Whoa.
But like legitimately, that movie is, oh my gosh. Like,
I definitely
oh my
agree.
gosh. The action and cinematography for that thing is insane. Do you know how many the Matrix like spin around shot parodies there out there? There's so many.
Wow, and I'm willing to bet that that number shies in comparison to the amount of bullet time parodies there
Oh,
are.
for real. Yeah, no, seriously. It's crazy that they stole both of those from Shrek, probably.
Probably. No,
Uh
I will agree with that. The Matrix is up there. I don't think it beats Toy Story for
no,
me.
I don't think so. But it deserves to be in the conversation, like alongside like Jurassic Park and stuff.
Yes. And I think that one suffers more than the other ones due to its sequels.
Do you think it suffers more than Jurassic Park does due to its sequels?
Yes.
Interesting. Not to derail the
And
conversation here, but I'm intrigued
I don't know how much basis I have for that.
for sure. Considering you love Jurassic Park and just quite enjoy Matrix.
I do. I really like Matrix, but not nearly as much as I do love just
Yes.
Jurassic Park. And okay, so I had a girl tell me that The Lost World was better than the first Jurassic Park the other
Why
day.
would she say something like that?
I don't know. I was substituting for a class here, and these poor students haven't had a teacher since the beginning of the year.
Dang.
And so my job was just to kind of make sure they stay under control and do some sort of busy work
Sure.
I didn't like doing.
I
But
bet.
they finished that, and I kind of let them just hang out. As long as they were quiet, I didn't care.
As long as you're
And I was
getting
walking
paid.
around. Yeah, exactly. And I walked around, and one of the girls was sitting there watching. Uh, well, I walked by, and I saw the glorious face of Dr. Ian Malcolm
Oh, bless.
on the screen. And I'm like, hey, what you watching? And she's from Jurassic Park movies. And I asked which one. She asked, it's The Lost World. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. Like, Jurassic Park is one of my favorite movies. And she kind of gave me this face. And I'm like, well, what? She's
She's
like, I
like,
think this
okay,
one is way
boomer.
better. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I don't like Jurassic Park. I like all the other ones.
What do you
And
mean you like all the other ones?
I legitimately did not know how to respond to her
I would
because I
also be taken
wasn't.
aback.
I'm like, I'm not going to tell a high school. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Actually, listen, kid, I've been around a bit longer
But I
than you
also
have,
don't
okay?
want to support her
Such
opinion.
heresy.
So I'm like, cool, okay. And I kind of just, I just did not know how to reply. So totally sidetracked. But that is an experience that I had that I cannot explain.
That is quite the experience. Like, okay. I
And I
get liking the Lost World, but A, thinking it's better than the first one, and B, saying it's the one you don't like.
is baffling. But
Huh.
I also do think, I think this is also very much up to for debate because I think the sequels to both Matrix and Jurassic Park suffer from similar things.
Hmm.
I prefer. It's hard. As a whole, I think I prefer the sequels to Jurassic Park,
Hmm.
but there are fight scenes and moments of the other Matrix movies that I think are phenomenal. The Chateau fight in Matrix Reloaded is one of the coolest fight scenes to ever been filmed.
Hmm.
Um, and I love that fight. And there are some parts. I love the finale of The final Matrix. Oh,
Revolutions. Me too,
Revolutions.
honestly.
Like
Like it's
that
over the
just
top
blows
and
my
bizarre, but
mind.
it is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun. So there are certain moments of the Matrix movies I prefer, but as a whole, I think the Jurassic Park movies sequels I'd rather watch. But it's hard because they all have really cool components, and I appreciate what they do for the world building.
Hmm, hmm.
I just think they were both executed so poorly that,
Interesting.
but I appreciate what they contribute to the world.
Sure. Okay. See, that's interesting because in my mind, having seen the Matrix trilogy back in December, which is a great Taylor Swift song, for before I watched Matrix Resurrections, having seen all of the Jurassic Park and World movies that I watched before I watched Dominion, I feel like they're both kind of in the same boat in that the second one gets a worse rap than it should
I
because of
agree.
how bad the third one is.
I agree.
But that said, I think I might be on the other side of the fence and at least rather watch Reloaded over Lost World. But I don't know if I'd rather watch Revolutions over 3.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's no wrong answers because at the end of the day,
The
they're
first
bad.
ones are great, and the other ones are not nearly as good.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Interesting, interesting. That would be quite the experience though.
I agree.
Anyways, where were we?
Do we have an answer for the 2000s?
I think I'd have to go with with Harry Potter for sure, but this one
It's between Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings.
this one, unlike with Jaws and Star Wars, my movie making heart is more leaning towards Lord of the Rings.
Yes, I
Because
agree.
it's hard because it's not like Lord of the Rings has been dormant since then. We had the Hobbit movies, and we're getting a new TV show that Amazon is spending $1 billion on for some reason as we speak. So it's
Do
not
you
like
plan on watching it?
yes,
It just came out.
my dad's a huge fan of Lord of the Rings, like the biggest fan I know. He loves them. And he watched the first 2 episodes and he said it's really good. It has the same feel as the movies. So I trust his word on this, just like I trust your word on pretty much everything else.
Mhm.
So I'm definitely gonna watch it for sure. I was kind of like middle of the ground until he told me that he really liked it. So
Okay. Because as of right now, I am not planning on watching
right.
it. I do not think it's for me. That's a whole different opinion. However, if you tell me that I need to watch it, then I will.
Bless. I feel very flattered by whenever you or Kiri tell me something like that.
No, and it is true. I tell you, man, we go through, we check your letterbox often.
Which is, I mean, not necessarily good, but it's a good thing you do if you want to keep up because I log a lot of movies.
And we love it. So um so let's go ahead and just go for it. Do we want to talk the 2010s separately? But I'm kind of thinking we should talk about the 2010s to present.
Yeah, no, I agree. As a quick shout out, of course, Dark Knight and Iron Man are super, super, super influential, especially in the pop culture zeitgeist that we're in right now.
Yes, I agree.
um, so I saw this post on Reddit the other day. Not that I'm on Reddit, but like my little Google News update or whatever show
Yeah.
me posts. Anyways, and someone had made this picture of like all of these different DC movies being like early first reports about this DC movie say it's the best DC film since The Dark Knight. Because that is just the cultural
Speaking
touchstone.
about the Flash,
Yeah, I heard about that, which I'm somewhat surprised they're still going through with when they canceled Batgirl, but that's another story for another
yeah,
day.
no, we'll talk about that sometime.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that because I want to see my boy Keaton, which granted, apparently Keaton's going to be in The Flash
In
too,
Flash,
but still. Anyways. Also, freaking freaking put Infinity Train back on HBO Max, please.
Did
I
they
don't
take it
have
off?
it, but put it back on. Yeah. But on the bright
Dang.
side, I sold my season 2 DVD, which I don't enjoy nearly as much as season 1, so I was willing to part with it for $150 on eBay.
Holy
So
cow.
yeah, no, I saw just they like once it got taken off, people were like, "Oh, well,
Buying
how are
it
we
up.
gonna like still watch the show if they take it off? What if they get rid of like the digital purchases, which I've also bought, so I can watch it still?" And so people were selling their things for like mad amounts of money. So I'm like, I can't sell season 1 because that's like legit one of my favorite things in like history of stuff.
Had a lot of fun binging that one with you.
It's so good. But I'm like, I'm willing to part with my season 2 DVDs since I have all 4 seasons on my Voodoo. So yeah,
Yeah,
no, I'm $150, 140 because it cost me $10 to buy it back then. So $140, which is cool. Which I then proceeded to spend partially on my Hellboy collection, but that was worth it,
100%.
100%. So, anyways, um, there's probably other ones that I'm forgetting. I love Unbreakable, but I don't necessarily think that's one as good as it is. Shrek, maybe not
Sure.
Avatar. Screw
Not
Avatar.
Avatar.
Poor James Cameron. We're like half the time we're like we love James Cameron, and the other half the time we're like we hate James Cameron.
We hate James Cameron. No, I know. I get it.
uh, Steven Spielberg is the only true MVP.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Even he has bad movies.
He
Maybe.
has reference.
Maybe. I don't know. I can't think of any. Jurassic Park: The Lost World, I guess. Okay, yeah. So tens to present. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is like Avengers 1, 3, or 4. You could make a
Oh
case
yeah,
for 2012 Infinity War or Endgame like easily.
easily. No, I agree.
What are you looking at
I,
other than me?
oh, always. It's hard. Um, because talking about the Avengers, that's what dominated the box office, and
Yeah,
to this day,
still
Marvel
does.
still
Yep.
just kind of puts out whatever they want, and people
Go
go
see
and see
it.
it.
I mean, I'm one of those people,
I am,
like
100%. Uh, except their shows. I haven't been keeping up on the shows. I don't really care. But
I Moon Knight, I recommend 100%.
I don't know, and I
And
will watch it
WandaVision.
tonight.
Moon Knight and WandaVision.
I did like WandaVision.
WandaVision slapped. Unfortunately,
Um,
they did start out with their best one.
yes. Um, and if I had to choose out of the Avengers, I would say Endgame. But that's only speculatively because once again, I think we're going to be seeing the ripples of Endgame more so in the future than we are currently.
Hmm.
I
Even more
think
than we are currently.
even more than we are currently.
Wow. That's
I
interesting.
I think once again, the you know, Endgame is going to influence a lot of young and up and coming directors
Yeah.
and moviegoers. For it is Avengers Endgame was one of the most unique cinematic experiences
For sure.
because it is the product of over a decade of anticipation,
Mhm.
and that's unlike anything else. And it's no surprise that DC recently, with their crazy mix-up that they have going at Warner Brothers, said that they are going to start planning like Marvel. They're going
And
to work on a
cancel
Marvel.
fandom, you heathens.
And I know, I was so mad about that. I was wondering if we were going to get another fandom because for the past 2 years, I have tuned in and watched fandom. Even the first fandom that went for like 7 hours or whatever it was, I had it on screen the entire time. I was there for both of them. Anyway, so yeah, I'm not happy they canceled fandom, but they are trying to adopt a more Marvel-esque plan so that they can get the big payoff.
That
And
may
that's
or
no
may not
surprise.
happen.
That may or may not happen. Personally, I don't think it will.
They
I
already
don't think
tried it
they have.
once.
Problem is, they haven't tried a Marvel-esque thing. They had Man of Steel, which is the only solo movie, and then they decide to try to shoehorn in, multiple characters into Batman v Superman, and then they're like, screw it, Justice League,
Just
everyone's
just
in.
do it. We're all here now. Everyone is here.
So they haven't tried something Marvel-esque. But anyway, so once again, I think we'll be seeing the effects of that and how successful it is uh, further on in the future. And I'd be curious to see if anything like that could be replicated. I
Yes.
personally don't think so.
I don't even think Marvel can do it
I
with
don't.
with this new multiverse saga.
No, I don't think they can. I'm still pretty excited for the
Oh yeah,
multiverse
I'm gonna
saga.
watch all the movies 100%. But yeah, I don't think even they can do it again.
Hmm. So I think we're still seeing the effects of Endgame, and we will be seeing them for years down the road.
I would agree. I think for a more auteur kind of a choice and a much more
Mhm.
recent choice, but regardless, I feel like we'll see a lot of in a similar veins of people talking about everything everywhere in the future.
Yeah,
I think that movie's gonna be a lot of ones where people are like, the ones that got into movies through like kind of hidden gems through their decades past, whatever. Like we would if we were getting into movies through the 80s, be
right.
like, oh my gosh, there's this old movie that no one's, really seen or talking about anymore, whatever. I don't know. It might probably still be very talked about. Don't know.
I'm sure it will.
But it's just such a like masterclass in a lot of filmmaking that I feel like that's one that'll be there.
And
Um,
I think the most influential ones, like Everything Everywhere All at Once, and oh boy, I just had oh yes,
La La
you're gonna
Land.
like this. No,
Oh,
that's good.
oh,
But
it
Top Gun
hurts.
Maverick,
Okay,
I
I was
think will
actually gonna
have
say
huge
that.
effects, and the first John Wick. And here's
Yes.
what I think they all have in similar that is going to be influential from here on out. It's moving this trend forward of coming back to practical effects.
Yes. Exactly.
All of those movies used incredible practical effects. Everything everywhere all at once. Their team was tiny. Their special effects
Mhm.
team, like, but it has some of the coolest special effects.
Mhm.
And in any movie that I've watched recently, despite its tiny team and budget towards that. But it was so much practicality. John Wick, all the fight scenes, the
Oh
choreography, the
my
still
gosh.
cam, and then Top Gun Maverick, which I've yet to see. I wanted to get around to it
I was
yesterday.
gonna
I wanted to get
ask.
around to it yesterday. Unfortunately, Kiri wasn't feeling up to it, and so
Boo. Tell
I
Kiri
know,
that I'm sad.
I know. I think she knew that when, but anyway, but all of those are great movies that are bringing us back to very practical effects
Yes.
and have been extremely successful.
No, I feel like you're right. Like I can totally see a lot of like action filmmakers in like 20 years or so being like, "Oh yeah, I watched John Wick movies and Top Gun Maverick and yeah, everything everywhere." Just like these other action films that are like you're saying, really going back to practical effects to strong effect because, practical effects kind of rock when they're done right. And so
Yeah,
they're getting a lot of buzz and praise. And so a lot of people have seen them. They're like, this is rad. I want to make something like that.
and it's kind of interesting. Keanu Reeves, because talking about Matrix again, I think that's what revolutionized CG in fights.
Yeah.
Once again, Keanu Reeves, and that changed how fights were directed. Going back to John Wick, Keanu Reeves, several years later, once again changing the way fights are directed.
And then going back to the 80s, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure
Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
revolutionized how teens talked,
And
which may or may not actually be true. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. But I feel like I remember hearing that from someone once.
I'd be very curious.
Hold on,
Very curious.
let me figure this out. But on that note,
Because it's changed the way I've talked.
agreed. Because I mean, we both do the hand thing,
100%. Not ironically, we do that.
Yeah, we just do it.
Influential, but I think that's a little bit hard to say right now, especially since Everything Everywhere All at Once and Top Gun Maverick are both so recent.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be curious to see how many studios look at the success of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Is this A24 film? And they're like, wow, there was something special about that. How can we
redo that?
How can we replicate that with our own? Because I hope that's what happens. We need more movies like Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Agreed. I agree. And the scary thing is, maybe not scary necessarily, but the directors of that movie, they just got signed to like a 3-movie contract with WB, I think. And so I'm intrigued, but also a little scared to see where that goes. This is honestly a lot of responsibility to handle.
But luckily for us, we can divide this responsibility out amongst our listeners. Because we want to know what other people think. These are just our opinions. This is just what we think.
Yeah.
And I would love to hear other people's thoughts on what they think the most influential movies are.
And why it's actually Morbius.
And why it's actually Morbius. But that brings me to a question that I wasn't sure that we'd have time for, but since we're starting a new session anyway,
might as well.
Do you think there's any movies that have impacted the world of cinema in a negative way?
In a negative way? Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck?
Definitely. Which old time viewers, OGs might remember. That was the subject of our very first podcast.
Oh, it sure is.
Let's see. Okay, so do you mean by negative? Do you mean like it's had? Okay, no, I see what you're saying.
No, it's made people go, okay, so let's not do this.
The Mummy 2017.
Nice. Yeah, remember when Universal had
the
full lineup for the Dark Universe in their monster movies?
I do remember that, yes. Russell Crowe played Jekyll and Hyde against Tom Cruise, who was for some reason also the Mummy. I've never understood that movie. I'll watch anything with Tom Cruise in it. As you guys know, I'm currently making my way through every Tom Cruise movie. And there have been a lot of gems, but there have been a couple stinkers.
I'm sure.
Interview with a Vampire.
Man. That's already upset some parties.
we
made peace.
We made peace with our differences, exactly.
I have not seen it yet, but I'm a little afraid to.
I'm sure you will at some point.
Oh, I know I will.
Let's see. So I don't know. I think Mummy 2017 is an easy pick for me. I feel like, and this may be a little controversial, so I'm interested to hear your thoughts, but I feel like maybe both Justice Leagues could be considered in a sense, which isn't to say that both of them are bad, because one of them slaps. But
I agree.
I feel like both of them maybe had a little bit of a negative effect on the overall movie-going society.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree that the Justice League perhaps did. Snyder Cut, I feel like, is only a negative impact because Warner Brothers is making it that way.
What do you mean?
And did you see the rumors recently that Warner Brothers
Yes, I did. Yes.
supposedly regrets
Yeah.
saying that the Snyder Cut should have never happened?
Yep.
My take on that is that, and I've been calling this. I've talked about this before. Not I don't know with you, but I've thought about this. That Warner Brothers regrets putting out the Snyder Cut because
Makes
it
them look
further,
bad.
yeah, it makes them look bad, and
Mm,
and that's not what they want to do. They don't want to continue the Snyderverse. They
right.
wanted to put a full stop to that, and I think initially they were thinking, well, let's give them the Snyder Cut, and that'll be that. That let's say that's just the end of it. There's no more Snyderverse, and fans will be okay with that.
But then
But
now everyone wants
instead,
continuation of it.
it was awesome.
It
Everyone
was.
prefers it to the Justice League, and people want more. And I think Warner Brothers is struggling with that because that's not what their plan was. That's not what they
Mm,
want to do. They have their own um, schemes that they're coming up with, and I get into a little bit more conspiracy theory water here. That I think that also in trying to replicate Marvel, they also mean they're trying to put out movies with the least amount of work but the highest amount of payoff.
yeah.
And I'm not saying Marvel movies don't take work, but compared to how much they make,
Yeah.
and really they can, like I said, they can kind of put out anything and they make money off of it. And I think Warner Brothers wants to create that formula
Hmm.
where they have such a loyal fan base that they can put minimal effort and money into a movie, but then get the maximum outcome.
Yeah. And that's the
And
problem. They don't have that kind of a fan base.
they don't have that kind of fan base, which is why I think they're hitting the full stop right now, and they are going to completely redo their formula. And I think that's why we're getting stuff, saying I think discrediting Zack Snyder a little bit, saying that the restore the Snyderverse and the release the Snyder Cut is fueled by bots. I think that's all spurred on by Warner Brothers because they are tired of people wanting more
Hmm.
Snyder and rallying against what they are currently putting out. Um, because they're done with the Snyderverse. So I get a little more into the conspiracy there, and I don't know how much of it is true, but that's just what I observe. And I think that's why they don't want to continue the Snyderverse is because Zack Snyder has some pretty big ideas, and his ideas would not be cheap or easy to
No.
make.
Nope.
And I don't think Warner Brothers wants to do that. I don't
Nope.
think they're willing to put forth that much effort and risk so much.
I would, especially with like the whole outburst we've had with the whole Discovery merger thing. I feel like that's
Mm-hmm.
pretty solid evidence towards what you're saying.
Yeah. So anyway, um, so I say the negative impact of Snyder Cut was only brought on by Warner Brothers. I think if Warner Brothers put a full stop and realized this is what people wanted, this is what people are asking for, then let's try to continue with that. I think it would have had a more positive impact. But they want to hit the reset button so hard on what they already have, and I think it is having a negative impact, but I don't think that's brought on because the movie is bad or the fans didn't like it. I think it is Warner Brothers making it harder for themselves.
Okay. Because I've seen a little bit of a like, oh, well, maybe, everyone wants the director's cut of a movie as soon as they're like, this movie isn't what how as good as we thought it was going to be. So it must be like the interference of the company instead of just the
Right,
director being like, no, this is just how I cut the movie.
right.
So I guess it's in my mind is given a little bit of like entitlement to fan base. And I think it's mostly only in like DC and Marvel movies, for to be
No, I
completely
agree.
honest. But still.
I agree. The only other one that I can think of, but I 100% agree with, is any sort of extended director's cut of Dune. You,
The 2021 Dune or the
yeah,
84 Dune?
well, I'd love to see more of the 84 Dune, but the 2021 Dune, honestly, and that's just because I'm greedy. I just want more.
Right,
I
right.
love that movie so much that they could have put in a whole another hour and I
Yep.
would have been happy with it. So,
Mhm.
mm,
It'd be a theatrical to extended Lord of the Rings, you know? Like it's
exactly,
already a perfect
exactly.
movie, but
But I could take more.
yeah,
No,
no, that's valid.
no, but I see what you mean, though. I see what you mean. I remember after Snyder Cut got the announcement that it was going to be released, David Ayer was
Yeah,
like,
the
"Oh yeah,
Suicide Squad.
the Suicide Squad has a much better director's cut," and nobody backed him on that. And what's his face, who directed 2016 Ghostbusters, also tried that,
Oh,
where
did he?
he tried to start a campaign to release his director's cut of 2016 Ghostbusters, but that also got nowhere.
Dang. My personal favorite is that fans started clamoring for Josh Trank's director's cut of Fan Four Stick, which is an awful movie. And he was like, you know what? No. He
No,
was the
no,
one that shut it down. So that was kind of interesting, but cool of him, I suppose. I don't know. It's got to be better. It's like Justice League. It's got to be better than the original cut.
right, right.
There's no way it could be worse. But
I
oh well.
agree.
Hmm.
No, that's interesting.
And I don't know of any others necessarily. I'm sure if I thought about it more, I could think of some.
Yeah.
But
But once again, that's where our listeners come in. That's where everyone else comes in. They
exactly,
can give their
message us
thoughts.
on our OnlyFans.
Our OnlyFans being our letterboxed because you are our OnlyFans.
Hey-oh, that was actually
Hey,
pretty good. That was really good.
thank you.
Yeah, so that's the things we had to say for
And we had a
today,
lot. We had a lot to say.
which is why, in conclusion, La La Land is actually the most influential movie of all time, anyways, and meeting. Just kidding.
There we go. There we go.
Just kidding. It's the most influential movie to me, which there's something to be said of that, you know?
Hmm. Would you say that's the most influential movie in your life personally?
Yes,
Nice.
definitely. Although, and it's kind of interesting, it definitely was at the time, and it's definitely still my favorite movie of all time. But I think since I've changed as a person, there's a movie that's like more influential to me now, if
Hmm.
not my favorite, because that's still and probably will always be La La Land. But that'd be something to I'd have to think about to consider, you know, because I feel like it is like I've watched it recently, and it's still definitely like the best movie in my eyes. It just freaking rocks and hits on every beat. But I feel like there's not quite the emotional connection anymore. Probably because I'm happily dating someone in a good relationship and not depressed anymore. Well,
That helps.
I won't necessarily say not depressed anymore. I'm better at handling it now.
Yes.
So it's not quite on that like emotional cleansing level that it used to be. So
Hmm.
I'll think about that this week and get back to you and maybe
I
even
would
possibly the viewers.
I would love to hear.
I'll think about that this week. I'll think about that. So, but yeah, no, it's definitely still my favorite of all time, easily. Like every time I watch it, I'm like, is it gonna be as good? And it's as good, like every time.
Every time.
Every time.
And Cats the musical is also highly influential in
Oh
how
gosh.
not to make a movie.
Oh
Just
no.
throwing that out there. I had to throw that out there before we
Putting
ended.
Taylor Swift in your musical is a good thing. Everything else is a bad thing.
It's awful.
Yeah, awful, 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 horrible dream. As is Dear Evan Hansen, but that goes more back to the story itself, which is very bad and toxic.
Yeah.
Not a good movie. Anyways,
Well,
I think that's all we had for that.
yeah. Thanks
Got
for listening. You made it this far, then Wow, you could have watched a movie in this
You
time, but
either
instead
really
you
like
chose.
us or know us personally and are just doing this as a favor.
Or we have chained up and we're making you listen to it.
Yeah, that's true. We do have a sounding board. By
Mhm.
which I mean you're chained to that board, and we play
Yes.
sounds at you.
Yes, that is exactly what we. But if you're doing it willingly, thanks for listening.
Yeah. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at electric.oofaloo. My personal letterboxd where I review just a crap ton of movies. I think I've hit like over 200 this year, which
Awesome.
is a lot more than I was expecting. Um, if
Shadow Spider.
yes, Shadow Spider 004
Thank you.
is my username. And
Mine
yours,
is Jetpack Cat Zero.
and that is us. You got anything on the docket this week?
Um, if I get around to it, more James Bond movies. Um, Other than that, I don't know. There's a lot on my watch later list. How about you?
Mood. Um, I think it's just mostly more Tom Cruise. I have Will Smith's Wild Wild West checked out to watch and probably hate, as well
Awesome.
as the old 70s version of Murder on the Orient Express because I love Agatha
Ooh, I
Christie.
want to watch that.
So yeah. So those two probably and more Tom Cruise.
Oh, if I get around to it, I really want to watch more John Carpenter stuff. I want to finish off his big movies, so Mouth of Madness and Prince of Darkness. And, I want to get around to those, but we'll see if I do. And I'll try to watch Top Gun Maverick
Please.
sooner rather than later.
I still highly recommend it in the theater if you can.
Yeah, I look for
Well,
it.
good.
But until next time.
Until next time, to you and all of our wonderful viewers, go check out Jaws. It's in theaters now for the first time.
For the first time ever.
We want to support our boy Steven Spielberg, and thanks again to him to supporting and sponsoring this episode.
This episode, yeah.
What a legend! I think he's gonna do some good things in the future.
I think so too.
Yeah, what a guy. Anyways, we'll see
Until
y'all
next time.
next week.